Welcome to Robots in Depth. Today I'm honored to have Ian Bernstein from Sphero here. He's going to talk about his long now journey in robotics because it started pretty early, I guess. How did you get into robotics and got started, so to speak?
So I mean, it's kind of a funny story. Ever since I can remember, I just sort of was always taking apart cassette players and other broken electronics that my parents had. And my dad both my parents actually were not technical at all. He's a classical guitarist. And when I was 11, he kind of seen this interest in electronics and mechanics and stuff like that. He ended up trying to get into digital music recording and met this guy that taught electronics at a university. So this guy was interested in learning how to play guitar. So they ended up doing this trade where my dad taught him guitar lessons and he started teaching me about basic electronics. Mm-hmm. So I had done that for a few months and this guy showed me this poster for the 1995 Beam International Robot Games in New Mexico at a place a couple hours away from where I grew up. And we went the first day just to kind of check it out. Turned out they had a workshop as part of the competition. I ended up building my first robot there and was just totally hooked. That
was the first one is free, they say, right? Then you're hooked. And
yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I went all 4 days of the competition. I went home and I just, after that, I just had stacks of broken TVs and VCRs and the whole wall of my house was just circuit boards that I'd scavenged the motors off of and the different parts to build more things.
Whatever you could out of that. And then that, of course, you went on to do other things. Could you talk quickly about the story up to Sphero, and we'll focus on that, I think.
Sure. So basically I was building robots. I made a website to teach others how to build these beam robots that are primarily built out of recycled parts. So it was good for me because I didn't have any money as a kid. So I did that, and then in school I went to university. I started studying electrical engineering and computer science. And I was about a year away from graduating, and I went to a career fair and just wasn't really looking for a job at that point, but I was just sort of asking companies what sort of jobs they had available. And to be honest, just everything just sounded really boring. It just, I was just going to be like another engineer in the back, at some big company, sitting in front of a computer all day, just cranking stuff out. And it just didn't sound fun at all. And this was maybe November of the fall semester. I ended up going into winter break and thinking about it. I was like, well, maybe if there's not, a really fun company out there for me. I didn't, at the time I didn't know anything about the startup community. I didn't know about startups. So I was like, well, maybe I'll start my own company. So I sat down with some books over winter break and I learned to program in PHP in my school and HTML. And I threw an ad on Craigslist and I started doing web development. I ended up not going back to school that spring. I was having so much fun. And that's what I did for the next 4 years. I had a web development company. And during that time, I also worked at a company called Robotics. Just part-time to kind of keep my engineering fresh, and we were doing some cool projects with them.
Also, you always wanted to stay in robotics in some sense, I guess, huh?
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And it was during my time there that I realized that it was 11 o'clock one night. I was working on this robot, and I was thinking we were buying all these little embedded microcontrollers, and they cost thousands of dollars, and you could buy touch screens and stuff for them, but the touch screens that you could buy, for these microcontrollers were terrible. It's like the crappy ones that you really have to push on, and the screen's all pixelated, colors aren't good. But I had the original iPhone in my pocket, and I think I was texting a friend, and I was like, well, this
fantastic screen in comparison, right?
Amazing, yeah, perfect touch screen, GPS, internet connectivity, it has all the sensors in it. Why can't I use this as the brains for these robots that I've been building? So I went to Google, I looked it up, and I found that not only were people not controlling robots with their smartphones, but nobody was controlling anything physical from their smartphones. And really, when I looked it up, you actually couldn't do it. Android at the time didn't have Bluetooth support. You could do kind of some stuff with Wi-Fi, but the experience wasn't good. But we just kept digging in. I met my co-founder, Adam. I think the day after I met Adam was when Google pushed a new update to Android that supported Bluetooth.
Yeah, that was just coincidence, huh?
Yeah, perfect timing. We started prototyping. We built a little dev board. We started prototyping some stuff. We put a remote starter in my car, and he wrote an app, and I did the hardware. We could roll down the windows and start the car from the phone. We controlled lights in your house. We put some motor drivers on, and we drove a little toy tank around. And with that, we ended up getting into Techstars, which is the seed accelerator. They helped us build a real company. We were able to bring more people in and raise money.
And the first product was the first version of the Sphero, the robots. You have an updated version with you here, or is that the same version as the one we saw a couple of years ago?
There is. So this is the version 2 of the product. So this one came out in September of 2013. So the one 2 years ago was the version 1. This one goes twice as fast. It glows brighter. The control system's a lot better. So it's easier to drive.
Lots of experience going into making it better, huh?
Yep. And we have some accessories, so like this cover. Some of the versions come with the cover. You can buy the cover, and we have some more accessories coming out this year.
What kind of accessories?
So we have another version of this cover. So this one, we call it the nubby cover. We have another version that's a lot thinner. It doesn't have the nubs on it. It's for better performance. It's still protection.
So that nubby cover, would that be for kind of outdoor use, or would it be for hard tile floors? Or
either one. Yeah, it gives it more traction. It's good so Sphero's waterproof. So it's good. Like the nubs give it a little bit more like paddling, like in water.
Yeah, otherwise you'd just stay there and spin, right?
Yep. It won't scratch it up. And one of the other accessories, we have a chariot coming out. So we actually have this like chariot that kind of goes over, and a slot that you can. There's Lego attachments all over it, so you can build onto it.
Ah, cool. So it's Lego compatible at that stage, yeah?
Yep, it is. And you can put your smartphone in the chariot as well, so you can like FaceTime or record video.
So then we have a telepresence Sphero here, huh?
Yep, exactly.
Cool. And then you brought out a new product too.
Yeah, so this is our new product, Ollie. So Ollie came out last month.
Really fresh, huh?
Yeah, we're still loading into the stores. I think there's an Apple store, across the street from the conference. Here, they just got their Ollies this week. So yeah, this one's. We basically took the control system that we had in Sphero, and we're like, what is the craziest driving experience that we can create? And that's where the idea for Ollie came from. This thing, again, super robust. I mean, it's designed to jump 5 feet into the air and land on concrete and survive that. It drives 14 miles an hour.
That's fast, huh? That's bicycle speed, huh?
Oh yeah, and then you can do tricks.
Okay.
So if you're going 14 miles an hour, you hit a jump, you can do 360s and 180s and all kinds of different tricks using this trick pad in the app.
Yeah, cool. And really taking it to the next level, huh?
Yep.
Yeah, and there's also been really massive progress for you in the company and in the corporation department. You took on some VC funding through Techstars, I guess, and then you took it from there. Could you tell us about that story? Maybe there's another young entrepreneur out there that wants to know more about how it is to be first in the accelerator program and then go through the different levels of funding. And
yeah, so I mean, there's been there's been startup companies out there that have maybe gone on Kickstarter and then raised a large round of financing, like a very large amount of money, millions and millions of dollars. But we've sort of had to prove ourselves at every stage. So we've raised, oh man, where are we at? Like I think the 5th round of financing we closed this last summer. in smaller chunks. So we've had to get some more money in and then really prove ourselves. But we were able to close a new round this past summer. I think we raised $17 million.
Which is a substantial amount of money, huh?
Yeah, and that's really, we've sort of proven ourselves, and now we're really ready to take this world of, robots and connected play to the next level. We actually reapplied to Techstars. Even though we're a pretty large company, we had closed our round, so we raised $34 million. But we decided to go into the Disney Techstars Accelerator.
Okay.
And we just finished that. We had our final big presentation 3 days ago. So Tuesday in Los Angeles. I've been living in Los Angeles for the past 3.5 months. And we were able to work with the Disney team. We were able to work with all the top executives at Disney.
Cool.
Of course, Disney owns Pixar and Lucasfilm and some other big companies like that to help us bring more personality and better stories into our products.
Yeah, because they are good with stories and characters and connecting to the toys to their product, of course. But you're good in the robotics side and in the technology side. So there's going to be some interesting stuff coming out of there. I'm quite certain of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then when you've done your first round there and you did the other ones, is there anything you would have wished your first round self to know when you did the second and third and now the really large one? Is there any kind of feedback that, gosh, I should have known that?
I mean, obviously what we did has worked. But I would say going back, when we looked at Sphero, I mean, it's a really complicated product. It's not complicated from the outside because a lot of people just look at it and they just see a ball, which is what we want. We want that technology to disappear. But I would have started with something simpler.
From a technical point of view then, less communication or...
Right, there was just so much infrastructure that we had to build. I mean, there's startup companies that just make apps. Or there's companies that just make hardware.
But you do both.
We have to do an amazing piece of hardware. We have to do an amazing app. The hardware was really hard. We have, a crazy control system in here. The mechanics of this thing and the software of this thing, incredibly difficult. Since we're in connected play, we need to be able to, just like a web company, they install Google Analytics, right? You need to know how long people are spending on each page of your website, what links they're clicking on. We need that whole infrastructure for our products as well, so we can make them better.
So that how people use it and improve it. Huh?
Right. So we had to build that infrastructure. So we were we're like 5 or 6 startup companies in one startup company.
And they all depend on each other too. I mean, if you did 5 out of 6, great. You still failed, right?
Exactly.
And if 1 out of 6 is late, you're late, right?
Right. So I would have still maybe had this as our goal, but maybe pick a couple of those. Like maybe we become the analytics tool for sort of devices or Internet of Things devices. Build that out first, and then add in. Now there's a hardware piece, and now there's a good app piece.
Would make it easier to do them one by one rather than all of them put together.
Right.
This major round that you now closed just recently was, I understand, significantly larger than your other rounds. Did that make a difference for the process? Because I guess very few people get to that level, and it'd be interesting to know your experiences from that process.
Yeah, I mean, I think we were finally really able to prove ourselves that. And prove to investors that we were able to bring a product to market. We released our second version. We were close to launching our second real product. So we'd finally gotten to the point where we proved ourselves. We had a good distribution. I mean, we're in about 10,000 stores worldwide right now.
That's cool, huh?
And it's done really well.
Must have been cool to go into just a random store and see your own product on there on the shelf. I've seen it in numerous stores when I walk around, and I always thought about meeting you. That's so cool. Huh? It
is cool when you hear people or mention you make a a robot ball and people like know what that is.
And also maybe when they talk about it and don't know you do it, and you say, yeah, that's my product, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's cool. Huh? So you got lots of stuff coming up. We'll talk about that at a later time. But you're also very connected to the robotics community in general. And could you tell me anything what you think is happening outside your company?
Right. I mean, so we're obviously learning a lot about the space. But because of all that data that's coming back from our real customers, we're learning a lot from that as well. And there's a lot of things that we didn't expect.
Could you tell me anything that you learned from this data that you didn't expect and that you then incorporated in future products?
Well, so with Sphero, there was the thing that people always had their speed all the way up. People were always hitting the boost button in the Sphero app. So that was kind of led to kind of figuring that Ollie would probably be pretty successful because people wanted something that went really fast. And then there's even smaller things that if you look at the play sessions, over time, it's not pretty flat. It actually drops off on Tuesdays. For some reason, people don't play on Tuesday.
So what do they do on Tuesdays? Huh?
I have no idea. But
that's interesting. And we don't know. That somebody has to find that out. Why don't people play on Tuesdays?
Right.
What do they do on Tuesdays? Is it
I don't know.
Tuesday night football, or I don't know, but it has to be something, right? That's really cool. And then you could actually, I don't know if that's ethically good or good for your company, but you could start sharing this information with researchers in social science, and that would be really cool.
Right. So I mean that drives a lot of our marketing, right? Like maybe we don't push. Maybe Tuesday is a bad day to pick to release our new app update.
Yeah, and also to do advertising. So could you tell us anything about the other days? Is Fridays, the weekend has to be big, right?
Yeah, weekend's good, Friday's good. There isn't a huge a spike as for instance, it's down on Tuesday. But there is a lot of data like that we can see how people are interacting with the product. Another example is last year, we released an app update in November, and our engagement of the product went up 6 times. Huge.
So what you added to the new version there of the app really resonated with people, huh?
Right. And again, we were using that data. We added in a storyline. We added in this backstory that when you now launch the app for Sphero, you see this 2-minute intro cinematic about where Sphero came from. It came from this planet Spheron.
Yeah, of course.
And there's like the bad Tetrons, and you got sent to Earth, and then Sphero comes crashing down into your bedroom, and then you get to name him. So Sphero becomes yours. It has a name that you gave him. So adding in those little pieces and then these missions that you go on to help Sphero out, 6x increase.
That's huge, huh?
Yeah.
And that you can also do A and B testing when you have this feedback. That's such a big thing, right?
Yep.
So that would be an essential component for anybody that can add that to their product. To tune the relationship with the customer.
Yeah, so this exactly the same sort of A/B testing and other things that web developers have been doing for a long time, we can now do with hardware. And we can substantially change what the experience is just with the software update.
Very interesting. So you're really connected to the robotics fair. You get exposed. You get people contacting you. They're doing startups. You get to know about all new cool sensors and also like system on a chip and all this stuff. Could you tell us anything generally about where do you think robotics is going? Where are we going to see a cool product? Maybe from somebody else than you, but where are we going to see the really cool progress?
I think it's been cool to see what like Kickstarter and Indiegogo and some of those crowdfunding companies have done for hardware, because there's so many cool ideas and so much cool hardware that's come out of that. Like big companies, would never have done probably 95% of the projects that are on there. But there's been some really successful things like Oculus or the Pebble Watch. Companies that got funded through those channels. So I think robotics in general, I think with the ability to 3D print, I think we're going to see a pretty rapid acceleration in robotics in the next few years. I think, especially
the Kickstarter. We have Kickstarter with one form of funding. We have Techstar and other programs like that also going into robotics.
Yep.
They're not, and VCs aren't that afraid of hardware anymore. I mean, I guess you see a lot of VCs in the robotics conferences you go to. I certainly do. That is a very big difference from maybe 3 to 5 years ago. There was just nobody was interested because they were very, very cautious when it came to hardware. I don't know if that's your experience, having done this for a while now.
Yeah, I mean, I would say VCs are pretty still cautious on hardware, but definitely if you can get validation.
Through then a Kickstarter, for instance, or Indiegogo.
Right. I mean, there's companies like PlayEye that raised maybe $2.5 million, I think they did.
Yeah.
But then got VC funded. There's tons of companies that launched on Kickstarter, and then even before their Kickstarter campaign even ended, they haven't had enough traction that they could get the real attention from VCs. The Jibo robot, right? Those guys just raised $2 million on Indiegogo a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
So I think that those platforms offer, both some money to get started and validation for it.
Yeah, and I also think that although hardware is hard, it's expensive. So I do appreciate why venture capitalists and investors are cautious when it comes to hardware, because it is expensive and hard compared to doing it just an app.
Yep.
Not that it's just an app, but it's easier when you focus on the software. But I think also that the customer need and the customer preparedness to pay for hardware is probably higher. So Kickstarter and Indiegogo and these kinds of sites really capture that we're more prepared to pay for a Sphero robot because it is physical rather than buying an online game. So I think that the Kickstarter really provides for the hardware community a very valuable source of funding and very validation, as you say. So.
Yep.
So really interesting to talk to you. Thank you very much.
Thanks. It's been fun.
This episode is sponsored by Aptomica. Everything you need in modular robotics. Or robots up close, what's going on in robotics, online and on the road. If you like this interview, don't forget to subscribe, follow us on Twitter, and subscribe to our email newsletter on robotsinDepth.com. You can also support the show on Patreon. I would like to thank the organizers of RoboBusiness US for their help when I recorded this interview.